Hey everyone, and welcome to our session. In this session, me and AZ are going to talk about what you didn't know Veeam covers in your estate. It's more than just virtualization. So, AZ or AS, why don't you give us a bit of an introduction?
Hey everyone, happy to be here. VeeamON 2025, so excited. I'm Andrey. I've been with Veeam for the last 13 years. I've been through a lot, and obviously there are some things that are more popular with what we have, and some things that are less popular. So we are going to talk about the latter today.
Yeah, hey everyone. So I'm Michael Cade. I'm a field CTO in the same team as Andrey, and I've been here for 10 years, not quite as long as AZ, but yeah, what we're going to focus on is some of those topics and some of those areas, features that we probably don't talk about enough from a Veeam perspective. So if we go and get into the agenda, I'll touch on this just before AZ gets into the Salesforce stuff. But yeah, like I say, we're going to talk about the coverage of workloads, and this isn't exhaustive. It's just 3 or 4 different areas that we wanted to cover in this session so that we raise awareness of them. And that's going to be Salesforce with Andrey. It's going to be Kubernetes from my perspective. And then we're going to get into some of the enterprise apps. And I've got a couple of slides just on MongoDB as one of those enterprise apps as to how we protect that. So AZ, let's get into the Salesforce stuff.
Well, before we do that, we have just one slide to remind everyone about Veeam protection overall, what we have these days, because there is a huge perception that Veeam is, VMware company, right? So we do things for VMware only. That's no longer the case. I mean, we used to be VMware only and #1 for VMware and all that. But then over the years, we added a lot of platforms, a lot of workloads that we support these days. So I think it is somehow important to talk about them all. Some of them are more popular, some of them are less popular. Some of them get a lot of attention, some of them get less attention. So our goal for today is to mention those that might be a little bit more enterprisey, let's say, or some of them are like relatively newer to Veeam portfolio. So this is what we'll try to do today. Right, Michael?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so the first thing we're going to start today from is Salesforce. Okay, I'm going to bring it back here. So this is my topic. I think it is one of the interesting SaaS platforms that we have on the market for sure. And don't get me wrong, but we've been asked to come to this market for ages. But then finally, we decided to do so, and I'm happy that we have a solution right now. So it's important to talk about it. Okay, but what are we trying to even solve with our solution, Veeam back for Salesforce? Again, there are a lot of misconceptions about SaaS platforms, and one of them would be that they don't actually need protection. While I might agree with that partially, but let me tell you, the story is a little bit different here, because most of the time the issue here is not really related to the platform being unavailable, or like with virtual machines, that typically where you have you have your storage lost, or you have your snapshots being stuck and something like that. So it's a little bit different here, because overall the Salesforce platform is very robust, and I would say it's built in a way that it's highly available, and most of the time people, whenever they need to access it, they can. But then here comes the challenge. So people go there and then they do stuff. So we are human after all, and we've been conducting a lot of studies to analyze this behavior. And most of the time, whenever people mention Salesforce failures or something like that, that all comes to to human behavior. People doing the third-party integrations that they weren't supposed to. They're getting the different or redundant permissions that they weren't supposed to, and they're abusing those permissions and things related to that. So humans go to Salesforce, they make mistakes, and it's very important to be able to to roll back that thing or the data sets and that they were supposed to have. If you don't believe me, here is the quote from Salesforce itself. So just go to Salesforce. It's in their help center. And the quote is, "It's important for Salesforce customers to develop routine data backup strategy." There you go. So Salesforce itself, when you go and ask them, hey, what about data protection? I assume it's in the cloud, it's resilient and everything. They would do yes, but still, data protection should be something like as an additional procedure that you have in your environment. So the reality is you should utilize software that protects Salesforce data, metadata, and files, and basically anything important there. So you'll be able to kind of to roll back from the disasters that might strike with you. Speaking about Veeam and Veeam approach here, so in 2025, we have actually a couple of options how you can do Veeam data protection for Salesforce. So one of the options is you go and you download the regular backup software, Veeam Backup for Salesforce. It is a Linux package that you can install on Linux server that you manage, and it's very easy to to install because we have an installation configuration script. You just run it, and then in a couple of minutes you will have the solution installed there. So you connect to your own Salesforce, and off you go. I'm happy to talk about 25 use that you can also utilize the solution as backup as a service, and because this finally made it to Veeam Data Cloud. So this is the part of Veeam Data Cloud now, Veeam Data Cloud for Salesforce. Also works like a charm. And then the third option, if you have your own trusted service providers, you can go there and you can just use what they offer you. And with that said, Veeam Backup for Salesforce would take care of your data, metadata, files, values, everything that's important to you. It is multi-tenant, it is multi-org, so you can have like multiple organizations, multiple production and sandbox added to the console, and you'll be able to go in terms of recovery for 4 different recovery types, starting from records, going to fields and metadata and files as well. I'm really happy to talk about this solution. And just to to tease you a little bit, this is what Veeam Data Cloud for Salesforce looks like. Also, backup as a service, you just go to the web portal, you add your Salesforce orgs, and then you manage it. Really easy. So with that, I would like us to talk about the second topic of today. Michael, why don't you tell us about custom and Kubernetes?
Yeah, awesome, AZ. And yeah, I think seeing that the Salesforce in VDC is a massive ask that we've seen out there in the field. But yeah, onto Kubernetes. And if you haven't heard of Kubernetes by now as a new platform to run your containerized workloads, you might have heard like Red Hat OpenShift, you might have heard SUSE, Rancher, Harvester, lots of different terminology. But at the end of the day, it's just a different platform, another platform that's using compute, storage, and networking. And some of the deployment patterns that we're seeing out there are the more traditional around stateless workloads living inside of the cluster, but then reaching out into services like an Amazon RDS or potentially even a virtual machine running Microsoft SQL Server as to where the VM lives. The middle one less so, but ultimately seeing a dedicated storage cluster within Kubernetes that your stateless applications dive into to get their state. And then more so, the two on the either end are the ones that we see the most, where we're starting to see a lot more of the stateful workloads, the data services, the databases actually live and reside next to those stateful workloads, the stateless workloads within inside the cluster, all inside that same place. Well, like as you all know, like when it comes to data, there's an element of having to protect that data, be it in the cloud and some of those same shared responsibilities that AZ just touched on within Salesforce, but equally across the public cloud. That data is your data. People make mistakes, misconfigurations, accidental deletion, and all of that good stuff. Same applies when it comes to Kubernetes. So if we go to the next one, I'll start talking about actually what we cover from a Veeam Kasten. And just a bit of a history here. Like if you remember Veeam, and when we first came out and we started protecting virtual machines on VMware, we could have followed the sheep and we could have done an agent-based backup. Instead, we actually approached it in a much more efficient way, and we went for that agentless approach. And it meant that you didn't have that overhead, and it was a massive differentiator for us until everyone else finally caught up, maybe 6 to 8 years later. Well, Kubernetes is a similar platform, albeit for a different workload, but ultimately what we've done here when we acquired Kasten, the reason why is they had a very similar ethos to how Veeam did, or how Veeam approached the virtual machine protection. So you'll see a lot of familiar data services around the databases that you see on the left-hand side of that slide. But the Kubernetes distribution, we don't care what Kubernetes distribution you're using. That could be one in the public cloud, it could be on-prem, it could be using VMware Tanzu, it could be using Red Hat OpenShift. Doesn't matter to us. Kasten gets deployed inside of the cluster, and we become part of the Kubernetes API, which means that we understand everything inside of that cluster and allows us to protect that in the most efficient way, much like those VM days way back when. From a storage perspective, it's about being able to integrate into the many different storage providers that you have underpinning that Kubernetes environment. And then obviously it wouldn't be a Veeam show if we're not talking about security services and integration. So making sure that we're integrating at the right layer into those policy guardrails such as OPA and Kyverno, and then Red Hat and AWS have also got some good stuff in there. If we go to the next, this gives a bit of an architecture overview. So like I mentioned, Veeam Kasten for Kubernetes gets deployed within the Kubernetes cluster. We then become part of the Kubernetes API, and then we start protecting the data and the whole application within that cluster, leveraging the storage layer, the Kubernetes engine. But equally, one thing that I don't think we talk about enough is being able to reach outside of that cluster to grab anything that's associated to that application, say an Amazon RDS instance or an Azure SQL instance, being able to protect that and provide that application consistency of that application, be it inside or outside of that cluster. So whirlwind tour of Veeam Kasten for Kubernetes. Hopefully that's useful. I'm sure there's other sessions that you can go and grab. But AZ, was there one more slide, or is that, I can't remember.
Yeah, there is a slide about mobility also. Yeah.
So and one of the best things around Kasten, and you could build this out, AZ, please, is the ability to, Kasten gets deployed within your Kubernetes cluster. If you've got a disaster recovery or a secondary site, we've got the ability, because of that agnostic approach, we've got the ability to provide the capability of being able to transform and restore that application anywhere. So that might be Red Hat OpenShift to EKS. It might be EKS to Red Hat OpenShift. Doesn't matter to us. It gives us the ability to provide portability. Again, I'm sure you're going to hear a lot about portability across the board with Veeam, but that's why I wanted to add this slide in there as well.
One more about modern virtualization, and I know it's going to be a good segue to my part as well.
So one of the things that we've seen over the last 18 months within the world of Kubernetes, and maybe you all have around the hypervisor Hunger Games, is the adoption of not just containerized workloads living on Kubernetes, but also VMs. And that's using an open source project called KubeVirt, and it really enables you to have your virtual machines alongside, sitting on the same hardware as your containers. Red Hat OpenShift virtualization, SUSE Harvester, all supported from a Veeam Kasten perspective, which probably does lead us into your bit, because it enables us to have that database, that data service that might be a big heavy lift to containerize.
All right. Okay, so let's talk about enterprise apps right now. We decided to do a special category of enterprise apps because, well, at the end of the day, they're like a little bit different, but at the same time, they have like similar characteristics. Most of them are like databases, and something that people use to kind of to store the the structured data. So I decided not to specify all of them, and this is the the table that I created just to showcase a couple of Veeam capabilities, because sometimes they're applicable, sometimes they're not applicable, but at the end of the day, they all go around how you're able to protect, to back up the certain workload, and then you're able to recover it, whether you would like to recover it as a, if we're talking about databases, we're talking about like granular recovery, like the particular tables in the databases, or we're talking about, the point in time recovery where you would like to, to replay the transaction logs to find the specific moment in time prior to the failed transaction that you would like to recover from. So it all comes to, again, the backup and recovery of those things. So I would like to to talk a little bit more about those technologies and what they mean for us, because sometimes it's like Veeam language, and I would like to clarify it. So the very beginning would be to explain the options. Like, for example, with SQL, right? So where's your SQL working? So how does your SQL look like? With Veeam, we always assume that, okay, it might be physical, it might be virtual, it might be in the cloud as a part of the virtual machine in the cloud, it might be PaaS in the cloud. Okay, so it might be like very different representations of SQL services that you have. But with us, so what is really good that we offer you like different methods to tackle all the workloads possible, and at the same time to do some specifics around them. So for example, if you have the physical box and have physical computer running SQL, that's fine, because you got Veeam agent for Windows and you can install it there. So the full agent backup would be done on a on a machine level and would be then stored to Veeam repository if you feel like. That's fine. And then from there, you can point it to Veeam Backup application, and you can perform all those operations that like recovery operations that I mentioned on the previous table, and you'll be able to recover SQL data from. Also, if it's a virtual machine, that's fine as well. And we have Veeam application aware processing, which is the next slide. But it's a gentle way to take a look into that virtual machine and what's going on there, to synchronize backup activities with VSS activities, if we're talking about Windows, or with some specific activities on Linux, which you can use the special scripts to to freeze the work of the certain databases and then unfreeze it after the backup operation, to ensure that the backup is done on a transaction consistent level. And also you can use Veeam plugins, for example, for SQL, right? So we know we're talking to some of the DBAs here, and sometimes the backup administrator and the database administrator is two different people, and then they prefer their own tools. So Veeam plugins for databases, such as Veeam plugin for SQL Server, is something that the regular DBA would be able to see in their SQL Management Studio, and would be able to protect their certain databases and to recover them using their own typical tools. Okay, so I mentioned already the application aware processing, but then just to reiterate that it's really easy. It's part of the backup policy that you can run for virtual machines. So just like one check, but then it enables a bunch of other capabilities that are included inside. And then it's available for multiple workloads. We don't even have the session to talk about Active Directory on Exchange, but it's available for those workloads as well. And then it is a really good way for us to ensure that transactionally consistent backups. So that's very important. A couple of years ago, I made a post at veeam.com blog where I described what consistency means for a backup. So sometimes it's crash consistent, transactional consistent, and it's all over there. So with application aware processing, we're reaching the maximum available level, and we're just making sure that all the transactions are, taken care of. And yeah, we have a great technology to help us with this. To reiterate about plugins, we have a bunch of plugins that are available for different platforms, and I just wanted to say that, for example, the plugin for Oracle RMAN, and we know how Oracle people and Oracle database administrators, they prefer their own tools, for example, RMAN, and they know their way around it, and this is fine. And we don't want any confusion between the backup administrator and the DBA, and we want them to work together, but at the same time have a let's say unified strategy in terms of how they protect the data. So for regular DBA, Veeam plugin would do the synchronization between the Veeam Backup and Application Server and Oracle RMM. It would use the technology to kind of to streamline the data, to move it from the Oracle environment back to Veeam Backup and Application repository, where they can see the backups and they can see the databases, and they will be able to recover the data from it. And this is an example how Veeam plugin for Oracle RMM works. But like I said, it really requires a lot of synchronization between those two platforms. And then the regular Veeam backup and replication administrators or backup administrators, they would be able to recover the data the way they want, starting from Veeam Explorer for Oracle. And this is something that I would like to showcase. So once the data came to Veeam environment from Oracle RMM, it's fine, but then you can see that you can restore the data from this backup. Okay, and then you can have a look, you can mount it, you can restore it instantly, and then the database would be up and running while you're still kind of doing the testing things with it. And once you're ready, you can migrate it back to the production. So it's going to be in a permanent state over there, recovered almost instantly. And with Veeam Oracle, with Veeam Explorer for Oracle as well, you'll be able to replay the transaction logs, and you'll be able to take a look into some of the transactions, performing the point-in-time recovery, basically anything that you would like to do. Yeah, just another example how you'll be able to use the Veeam Explorer for Oracle, and the recovery iterations available to you, starting from the instant recovery, going to the published databases, and then to additional transactional recovery as well. And yeah, one of the screenshots to show how easy it is to do with Veeam. So once you have the backup of the database, once you have the transactional log, and it's already there, so you can just navigate between the timeline, and then you can go for a specific moment in time where you can see the slider over here in the middle of your screen, and then you can move it to find the time that you're wishing for. And then we call it a fine tuning for the restore, and the right side of the screen you can see those operations performed with the database, and how easy it is to navigate and find the iteration that you want, or the moment in time prior to this operation. And kind of last thing here to mention, it's instant recovery. I already touched on a little bit on this one, but this is what we're proud of, to develop technologies that would provide instant recovery for a lot of things. And I'm pretty sure everyone knows about Veeam instant recovery, such as for virtual machines in your environment. But also we have the database instant recovery, which allows you to spin up the database right from the backup without decompression and reduplication, and just work with this database. And when you're ready, you can publish it, and you can also apply all those transactions that were happening with this database while it was on staging environment. So by doing that, the recovery would be really instant, because the database would be available right away, and then whenever you're ready, you'll just publish it and it's going to be live. But then no data while you're doing such operations, and the testing would be lost. So I'm really kind of grateful to Veeam to enable those technologies, and I'm really excited for you guys that you can protect those enterprise applications with those technologies. Last thing here, again, this metrics, and I know it's a lot of reading, but then make sure that you go to Veeam Help Center, and whenever you're concerned about special thing Postgres databases or SAP HANA, which I didn't have time to cover, but we've got a lot of information to help you navigate with this. And now back to you, Michael.
Yeah, and I guess this is an extension of those enterprise applications. The one thing I'll add to that instant DB recovery, and you saw on the last slide there that Andrey shared, was around instant recovery. Andrey shared the Oracle piece, but it's still very much there for SQL, actually where it was first. I've been doing a lot of work around that Postgres SQL that you might see a demo of somewhere soon as well. So yeah, let's get into Mongo though, because Mongo is an interesting one. It's the first NoSQL database that we've brought out as a supported way. Before we had this native integration, we would have to use scripts. No one wants to manage scripts, but this would give us, this way will give us the ability to see across the whole replica set. And it's built into Veeam backend replication, which then enables us to provide the Veeam Explorer. So the granularity of those collections are just a way of coupling or grouping the databases that you probably know from a SQL perspective. And if we go to the next one, and it's simply, we add a protection group across those replica sets. So you can see here from this screenshot that we have our three nodes within our replica set. One of those is your primary, the other two are secondaries. And from there, we take a backup from one of those secondaries and we store that in that same format locally that enables us to recover that. We can then offload that to other locations. Next slide is just another screenshot adapted into how do we create that backup. The backup looks hopefully very familiar for anyone using Veeam today. And it gives us the ability to protect that replica set. So all of the machines are included. So we get a grip of all of those, but we're only concentrating on one of those from a database perspective. But when it comes to recovery, we will recover all three of those systems. And then I think there's one more slide, which gets us into the recovery. So very similar to what Andrey shared from a Veeam Explorer for the other SQL-based applications and databases. We have the same approach when it comes to MongoDB. So we can go in there and we can go and grab individual instances or individual databases, collections in Mongo's terminology, and be able to bring that back into the production or export that out to another location. I think, is that us done, AZ? One more?
That's it. Yeah, just a couple of words probably. Well, I brought those links for you from the help center, but it's all kind of the story starts at veeam.com. So if you want any like additional materials or basically any resources, we've got a resource library, we've got white papers, we've got webinars with the subject matter experts talking about those technologies in like kind of a deeper dive for sure, rather than us for half an hour like trying to cover everything at once. But yeah, we've got a lot of things over there. So make sure that you check those resources, and whenever you're in question, you talk to someone about it. Anything to add, Michael?
Yeah, just we've got so much documentation. I think our documentation's the best in the business, but I would say that I work here, so I'd be always interested in your feedback. Equally, I'd be interested in your feedback if you want to hear, like Andrew said, about a deeper dive into any of those areas. I think we innovate quite quickly at Veeam, and we release a lot of good stuff. And we talk about it at the release, but then we maybe don't keep on talking about what gets iterated on. And I think we need that feedback from you to know where we need to get into the details and to share some of this. Did you know that we had all of this stuff that me and AZ said about? I guess is another question. If there's a way you can give us that feedback, that'd be amazing.
All right, with that, we are ready to wrap up, and thank you so much for watching. Happy VeeamON. I hope you'll enjoy other sessions as well as this one, and then always happy to talk to you.